Hey everyone, ILDA here from I Love Doing All Things Crafty, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For today's process video, I'm going to share with you how I created this fun surprise slider birthday celebration card to celebrate Honeybee Stamp's 3rd anniversary birthday. As you can see, when you pull the balloon slider up, it reveals the forest friends that are hiding in the cardboard box. Kinda like when you go to a surprise birthday party and all the lights are off, this time your friends are just hiding in a box behind a bunch of big balloons. This card has some thickness to it, but not too bulky that you couldn't put it through regular mail. For today's card, I used a variety of supplies from Honeybee Stamps. Most of the dies I used come from the Celebration Box die set. The Happy Birthday sentiment comes from the Foxy Sentiment stamps. Not sure why I'm showing the Celebration Box stamp set because I never did end up using it. And of course the Forest Friends from Honeybee Stamps. And finally the Hooray die for the front of the balloons. For links to all the supplies that I used in making this card, make sure you check out the links below in the video description. So I'm starting by using a stamp positioner and using blackout ink. It's one of my new favorite inks from Ink on 3. It gives you a nice crisp line and it dries almost instantly. I find it works really well with alcohol and even water-based markers. So for now I'm just going to let you watch as I color this image in. I am not a colorist by any means. I'm still learning how to use alcohol markers, and I'm just playing around. I sometimes add my light color first or sometimes add my dark color first. I'm just still experimenting and learning as I go. So in the end, I do love the results. So whatever you do, I'm sure it'll end up working in the end. The markers that I'm using today are from Spectrum Noir. I try to keep the cap to the left of the screen so you can see the colors I'm using as I color. And the paper that I'm coloring on is Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound smooth solar white paper. Alright, now that my images are all colored in, it's time to work on the background. So here I have a piece of a Strathmore Bristol smooth paper that I'm going to be blending out some Distress Oxide inks. First I'm going to use Picked Raspberry, and then I'm going to use Peacock Feathers and blend those two together, and then I'm going to finish with Fossilized Amber and blend that together with the other two colors. By blending these three colors together, you end up with this rainbow-like background. To finish the background, I'm just going to give it a little spray with some water and then pick it up with a paper towel to reveal this fun splattered effect. Alright, now I'm die cutting my pieces for my box, and I like to keep my dies together if possible, but as you'll see later on, I do have to break these dies apart for the balloons. So at this point, I have not experimented with this design. I'm still trying to figure out how this exactly is all going to come together. So what you see is my brainstorming and the process that I actually take to figure out how I'm going to put this and make it work. To create my pull tab, I've just got these scrap pieces of paper that I'm gluing together so that it's a nice thick pull tab. And here I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to create a slit so I can slide this slider through to be hidden behind the Forest Friends. Now in hindsight, had I done this card over, I probably would have created a thicker pull tab, or a wider pull tab I should say, so that the balloons have a sturdier base to grab onto, whereas this I found was a little bit on the thin side. In the end this did work, but had the pull tab been a little bit thicker, I think this would have worked a lot better. So now I'm just creating the channel for the slider to move up and down, trying to keep it as straight as possible so that it just glides in and out without catching on any part of the card. To complete the slider mechanism for the card, you'll have to have a stop point for your slider, and you'll also have to add a piece of foam to the end of the slider to keep it from completely sliding out of the slot. So here I've taken another piece of Bristol smooth paper that I've ran through the Sizzix machine with all the balloon dies. And now I'm using a finger dauber to add my ink to the balloons and trying to leave a highlight in the center or to the side of the balloon as I add the ink. Here I'm using some Lucky Clover, and I'm also using some Wilted Violet, and then the rest of the balloons I will be using the same colors as I used in the background. So here again, I'm trying to figure out how this is all going to work. I've got this scrap piece of paper that I'm going to use to cover up the friends and position the balloons carefully so that you can't see any of them hiding behind the balloons. I'm using Scotch quick dry glue to add my balloons, and as you can see I'm just adding a little bit of glue to the center of the balloon, or even a little bit of the balloon, just so that it gives me that wiggle room to tuck in balloons behind each other and reposition them if I need to. To some of the balloons I do add some foam tape behind them to give them that more realistic dimensional layer popped up look. And now that the balloon cluster is complete, we can start building the card. Because I want the balloons to stop at a certain point, I'm adding another piece of foam tape as a stopper on the slider. Here I'm using a pencil to mark off the area where I'll be adding the glue to. As you can see, it is a small space, and this is why a wider pull tab would have been beneficial. Here I'm just using some black sewing thread and bunching a whole bunch of strings together, and I'm sliding it through the slit in the box and pulling it through so I can hide it behind where the box will be glued to the panel. Thankfully, the balloons had not adhered yet to the slider, so I was able to pull them off. It's much easier if you attach the bottom pieces of the card and then finish off by adding the balloons to the slider. Here I'm just adding some more details to my box by adding some vintage photo to distress the edges of my box. And because I'm a little paranoid about this card falling apart, I'm adding some multimedia matte glue, and then I'm going to add some more Scotch glue just to make sure it doesn't fall apart. As you will see a little bit here, I do also reinforce the back with some more paper and glue. And now all that's left to do to complete this slider mechanism is to close up the back panel. To make things a little more obvious for the recipient, I'm just going to stamp the word pull on the slider tab. But as you will see in a little bit, I do end up changing how that pull tab is finished. Now for the inside sentiment of my card, I'm just taking the happy birthday stamp and I'm just going to use the same 3 inks that I used on the outside of my card to create another rainbow kind of effect on the stamped sentiment. It was at this point that I realized that the pull tab wasn't going to work, as it interfered when I tried to open up the card to add my inside sentiment. It was just catching on the surface, so it wouldn't allow the card to open properly. So I knew I had to change it up, and all I'm doing is trimming it off, and I'm going to be stamping the pull directly onto the balloon. But as you will see, I did mess that up a little bit as well and had to change that also. And that's what happens when you stamp on a not so flat surface. So thankfully it's an easy fix. I just die cut another balloon the same size, colored it and stamped the sentiment on it, trimmed it to size and placed it back to hide the original balloon. So when I was sliding the balloons up and down, I noticed there was a little bit of a catch on the balloons with the actual stuff that was glued onto the front panel. So to fix that, all I did was add a little bit of foam tape underneath the slider just to lift up the whole thing. And to finish off today's card, I'm just adding some string to the bottom balloons just to finish it off. For more inspiration using these products, make sure you stop by the Honeybee Stamps blog. And to celebrate this birthday celebration, there's going to be tons of giveaways and sales. So make sure you check out the links below in the video description. Thank you all for stopping by and watching. Hope this card inspired you today. And until next time, everyone, happy crafting. Bye!